What's happening, everyone? It's Angelo. As you know, Tom, Jeff Sampson, Sean, and I attended the BioForce Conditioning Coach certification a couple months ago in Laguna Hills. It was a great time. There was a lot of great material presented. I'm making this video because I'm not able to join you all this Friday for the presentation, so I'm just going to give my portion, the overview, sort of introduction to what we learned at the workshop. And Tom, Jeff, and Sean will show you the hands-on portions, the testing and assessment, and the training methods that we discussed. A little bit about Joel Jamieson. He founded the website 8weeksout.com in 2009, and it's a website about physical preparation and athletic performance. He's also the author of Ultimate MMA Conditioning, Mixed Martial Arts Conditioning, which is most well known for strength and conditioning for combat sports. Initially, he started a career as an athletic trainer for the Seattle Seahawks. And then he later opened his own gym and realized when he met a mixed martial artist that there was a dire need to develop a more structured and more effective conditioning program for mixed martial artists and fighters. So my reasons for taking the course is because, one, there's nothing that lights you up like being in a fight or sparring. I think MMA is one of the highest forms of testing one's physical and mental capacities. And it not only requires high levels of strength, power, stamina, agility, coordination, flexibility, etc. It also requires high levels of skill and technique. You have to move in unpredictable and multiple planes of movements. You got to be able to strategize against a moving object that's constantly changing. So you got to be adaptable, and you've got to have really good reaction time. And then you want to do all of these things and perform under a high level of duress. So someone's trying to kick you in the face and kill you, and you still have to maintain physical and mental composure at the same time. So you also want to do it when you're fighting. You also want to win, right? You want to come out on top, but you also don't want to get injured. And then next level is you also don't want to seriously injure the other person. So in terms of training my clients, because this course was about developing a conditioning program for athletes that are challenged at the highest physical and mental levels, I knew it would give me ideas on how to not only help my clients move towards their goals in interesting ways, but also help them even go above and beyond the vision they have for themselves. Because, for example, if I was only familiar with what it takes to run a marathon, then my training methods might be confined to that paradigm, so to speak. But by having more knowledge about what it takes to train an MMA fighter, I have a higher and broader spectrum to work with, so I can hold my clients and my own training to a higher standard. So an overview of what we discussed, we set to establish a framework for understanding and developing conditioning at the highest levels. We also aim to learn how to perform and coach a variety of training methods and learn to develop a systematic approach to create and manage programs for a variety of sports and goals. We started with defining conditioning. So conditioning is not just about doing high intensity workouts. It's not just about mental toughness. It's not just the training that you do before a competition. The components of conditioning involve the body, brain, and the environment. And that was something that he stressed throughout the whole presentation. So I sort of expanded his definition of conditioning to be: conditioning is about preparing within a given time frame as best as you can the body and brain's ability to perform with the greatest amount of confidence and motivation and maximum power output in the environment that the person is expected to be in. Some of the things I appreciated was that Joel discussed a holistic perspective, right? The brain, body, and environment, kind of keeping those three factors in mind. And one of the main points he emphasized is how the brain or mind controls everything, so to speak. It has an impact on how we perceive, right? How our perception affects performance. and the higher level of threat or perceived stress negatively affects movement efficiency, so you're slower, less coordinated movements, and causes sympathetic upregulation, so there's more energy expenditure and you're faster to fatigue. So the main way he helps athletes to learn how to have better control of their energy output is through a form of biofeedback. He didn't call it that, but essentially that's what it is. He has them monitor their heart rate during exercises, and then while they're performing the exercise, he'll ask them to keep their heart rate within a specific range, and then during rest periods he'll ask them to drop their heart rate down as fast as they can and as much as they can within a certain time range. So Tom and Jeff and Sean will kind of further discuss those as they do the training methods with you. As we know, the pinnacle of fitness is power output, right? So power output, the amount of power that can be generated, is dependent on efficiency of the energy systems, so your metabolic processes. Power output is dependent on movement quality, skill and technique. He didn't really discuss skill and technique because in terms of mixed martial artists, they usually have another coach that goes over skill and technique. Also, power output is dependent on the level of function of the autonomic nervous system. And then he talked about how it also is affected by the brain and motor control. So starting with energy systems, you know, there's the aerobic energy system, also known as oxidative phosphorylation. So you'll notice there's a lot of different terms here, so I kind of try to work to straighten those out. So aerobic energy system, also known as the oxidative phosphorylation system. Anaerobic systems, there's two. One is the phosphocreatine associated with alactic fitness power. Alactic fitness relates to power. And then anaerobic glycolysis is associated with lactic fitness, is what he was calling it, strength. Our bodies are set up to mostly run on the aerobic system, and that's why increasing our aerobic fitness will positively affect our level of anaerobic fitness. Aerobic energy production is the most adaptable and flexible of our energy systems. It's essential to life. It has the most room for improvement and can improve the most. A study has shown that VO2 max is the most important predictor of mortality, and endurance athletes have showed to have the highest life expectancy and lowest risk of death, according to that study. So during any activity or exercise, when your aerobic capacity is low, you have to tap into your anaerobic reserves sooner. And of course, you will fatigue faster or more quickly because you can't keep that up, right? So the greater amount of energy that can produced from the aerobic system, the longer you can perform, the longer it can be maintained, and more power output generated. So it was really a reminder for me to do more aerobic training with my clients and for myself, right? And going to Shasta was a testament. So the month that I had after the workshop, you saw Tom and Jeff Prusmack and Sean and I just kind of busting out some of these training methods that you guys will go over to just increase our aerobic capacity, and it truly paid off because at Mount Shasta I felt great while I was hiking and afterwards. So in terms of movement quality, as you know, inefficient movement results in poor transfer of force. So the more biomechanically efficient we are, the less taxing it is on our energy systems and requires less metabolic energy expenditure, and therefore the more power we can deliver. We also want to enable our clients to have a full range of motion necessary for the activity that they're doing or the movement that they're doing. And the ways to do this are, one, he mentioned plyometrics. It trains more output of our connective tissue, right? So the more we can use the elasticity of our connective tissue, it can transfer more force and decrease the cost of movement. He also talked about, instead of perfecting one movement, so like trying to get the perfect squat, you also want to develop more movement variability, right? A range of movements that someone can do. And that allows the body to be more adaptable to a wider variety of environments and interact with their environments in a more variety of ways, which allows greater performance and reduced chance of injuries. You'll notice that the highest level athletes always have greater movement variability. And another thing he mentioned in terms of increasing movement quality is to get soft tissue therapy done either by yourself or a therapist. In terms of brain and motor control, our internal physiological state of the body, the perceived level of threat from the external environment, our coordination of movement, and our level of motivation and decision making will all affect one another. Our ability to respond to stress will affect our energy expenditure and our power output. So the sympathetic nervous system drives extension-based postures and positions. So any sort of extending movements, it sort of stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic system is driven by flexion movements and postures. And so these movements and postures promote rest and recovery and regeneration, right? Protein synthesis. In terms of motor control, increased stress, so overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, negatively alters motor patterns and increases energy production and cost of movement. So we want to introduce and practice new movements in simple, controlled, low-stress environments. Then we want to add load, then some complexity, and then increase stress and fatigue. So the goal is to complete the movement or task with good form, right? So good movement. It's not about adding weight, but moving and performing well. After all that, then we want to start to layer in variability of movement. We also talked about stress tolerance, and that's teaching someone the skill set how to perform well under stress, right? So mixed martial arts, you're fighting with somebody trying to kill you. So we want to identify the stressors involved in the person's sport or activity, the temperature, the time of day, the location, the surface that they're going to be in, the surroundings, any potential injuries that they may have to deal with. We want to progress the stressors to be challenging but not overwhelming. We want somebody to be successful and feel good about their work while we're adding these stressors into their training. So the goal is to do as much work as possible with the least amount of effort rather than the most. The easier it feels to the person, the better their performance. So some of the skills we want to build in there as we're adding these stressors is have them to learn to control their breathing, right? Control their attention. Like if they're always thinking about how tired they are, we want to help them practice focusing on the possibilities to win, right? We want to use visualization. We want to break down the activity or sport into blocks, right? It's called segmenting. And then help them build some sort of positive self-talk. So key takeaways and reminders for me was, one, do more aerobic work, right? So I'm more attracted to explosive movements, but by doing more aerobic work, I personally experienced how it significantly improves power output. Also, to aim for more movement variability and quality, right? And I think in terms of training our clients, this is something they appreciate, because when they're always doing a squat and a push-up, kind of gets boring. So if we can start to add more complexity to that and variability, then all the better. So this increases adaptability, performance, and reduces injury. So use plyometrics and soft tissue therapy. Also, the extension and flexion movements. So extension movements and positions to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, and then flexion movements to calm the body. So you notice that sometimes I have my clients, before they leave, get into the recovery position, like this fetal position, just so they can kind of calm down really quick from whatever workout, maybe the intensity of the workouts that we were doing. So that way they're not leaving with their sympathetic nervous system on. We can kind of shut that down a little bit and begin the recovery right away. Another takeaway was focus on movement quality under load, high fatigue over quantity and speed. We want to use training to improve stress tolerance and prepare for a specific environment. We want to coach to maximize motivation based on perceived benefits and expectations. So one thing that he went over was that you want to explain to somebody, and we already do this too, right? The benefits of something and what they can expect to gain from it, rather than, you know, the negative sides of what they're doing. Managing stress, you want to strategize how to downregulate sympathetic and stimulate parasympathetic system as fast as possible after stress. So this increases recovery time and effects of recovery. So I mentioned this already. And then in terms of managing stress, chronic sympathetic stimulation increases inflammation in the body. Overtraining and overstress will increase the probability of injury and tissue failure. And this is just a protective mechanism that our body has, so we don't like break ourselves. We want to support anti-inflammatory function because obviously after a workout you have a more inflammatory state going on. However, just like Yale described last week, when you're on a low carb diet, Joel Jamieson also mentioned this too, after workout you'll produce higher inflammatory and immune response markers than somebody that's on a high carb diet. So so there you have it. I guess that's it. Tom, Sean, and Jeff will go over the testing and assessments and training methods with you right now. Aloha, y'all, for the better. Also, by doing more aerobic work, obviously increase, let's see, okay. Because we want them to be successful in doing the training or activity within these progressive stressors. We want them to be successful in completing the task or the workout in these progressively stressful the parasympathetic system is driven by flexion. Bleep.